Ladies and gentlemen, Krzysztof the Polish Geek, and welcome to the part 2 of our Donkey Kong Country marathon, and time for the review for the best game in the series, Donkey Kong Country Diddy Kong's Quest. And it's probably cliche to say that this game is the best in the series, but it's considered the best for a reason, because this really is the best in the series. It does everything that the original has done great and elevates on it and improves on it in every single way, shape or form, and makes the original look inferior, to say the least. And that's also the one I've been even playing in my childhood the most out of all three of them, which shows even back then it clearly was my favorite one. Although, as I said, and it even makes it hard to go back to the original, but that's what a sequel should do, right? Make what made the original great and improve upon it in every way, shape or form. To the point that, as I just said, it's even hard to go back to the original. Unless you're like me and you do a marathon, like I do every year, and beat all three of those games. So, time to talk Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy Kong's Quest. The best one in the series. And this game truly is a masterpiece. Again, the story of the game is pretty paper thin, just as the first game, although I do like how the game actually does something different as opposed to Mario games, which is always just Mario saving Princess Peach. But this game instead has Donkey Kong kidnapped by King K. Rool, but who now calls himself Captain K. Rool, which is pretty consistent with the pirate theme of the whole game, and his Kremlin crew, and take him to Crocodile Isle, home of the Kremlings. I guess you could say it's basically Donkey Kong's version of Mordor. Diddy Kong and his girlfriend Dixie Kong set on the journey to the creepy world of the Kremling's Crocodile Isle to rescue Donkey Kong.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
In the Game Boy Advance version, you actually do get a cutscene that shows all of it, while in the original SNES version, it's just all in the manual. With Donkey Kong kidnapped, as you can imagine, the player characters are Diddy Kong and of course his aforementioned girlfriend Dixie Kong. And what I love is that Dixie Kong has entirely new abilities that neither Donkey nor Diddy had. Dixie has her yellow ponytail that she uses to pick up barrels up high, but she can also use it to glide down or glide around. This ability is very useful in the game actually. Whenever you have to jump down, Dixie's glide is very helpful, while Diddy is pretty much what he was in the first game, and this is what I call a great introduction of a new playable character. Make them unique, useful in their own way, and give them their own unique abilities. Dixie is often far more useful than Diddy with her gliding ability. The level design in Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest is very different from the level design in the first Donkey Kong Country game, which makes sense since the action is moved from Decale Isle to Crocodile Isle, and from a pretty grounded level design of Decale Isle to much more surreal, over-the-top levels. And just as in the first Donkey Kong Country game you start in a jungle, this time you start on the pirate ship, and not just any pirate ship, but Gangplank Galleon, King K. Rool's ship, one he used to invade Decale Isle, and one where the final boss battle took place. But this time you explore a lot of different parts of the ship, since now this time it's the first world you visit in the game, and it feels much bigger now. And afterwards you go to Crocodile Cauldron, filled with volcanoes and crystal mines, followed by Swampy Krem Quay, full of swamps, and then everybody's favorite amusement park, Crazy Kremland. Come on, who wouldn't want to visit there? Just riding on those skull roller coasters. Plus, right outside of Crazy Kremland, there is another swamp, but also where zingers have their hives, and where you fight King Zing boss. But We'll get to him later actually. And afterwards there is Ghostly Gloomy Forest Gloomy Gulch, and finally King K. Rool's Keep, which as the name implies, it's a castle of King K. Rool, and it's a medieval castle. Just as in the first Donkey Kong Country game, the levels in Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest are also varied and different and unique from one another. Like, again, it's nearly impossible to tell any of them apart because again, each level does something super unique. Like for example, look at the volcano levels in Crocodile Cauldron. While the first volcano level is pretty straightforward, the second one is pretty challenging and also has you ride on a blue air balloon, which is really unique. And then there are also those sunken basement levels, like the very first one is again pretty straightforward, of you just swimming under the water inside the sunken basement of a ship. But then the next one, which takes place in the Crocodile Cauldron, the water is now a lava. Don't ask how come the ship doesn't melt. Again, just enjoy an awesome game. And then you have to jump on a seal clapper that will briefly turn water into regular water that allows you to swim briefly. And then there is a third sunken basement level under Swampy Creme Quay, and this time, because the water is swampy, it's super dark. And you have Glimmer, the fish that will light your way, kind of how Squawks did it back in the first Donkey Kong Country. And there are also swamp levels, and even if the levels themselves, you can't really say there is any unique gimmick to them, but at the very least they made each swamp look different shade of green, which makes them all unique in and on themselves. And also each has different enemies. And the castle levels inside K. Rool's Keep are also all different and unique from one another. They're all very creepy and have the same music and the same creepy atmosphere, but each of them does have its own unique gimmick. Like the first one, the floor itself is actually going up, while in the second one, this one is actually somewhat more straightforward because you're just climbing ropes all the way to the top, and then the third one has you turn into your animal bodies and you're going up while the green toxin is chasing you. And then there are also those fan favorite Bramble levels. Like, not only they have some of the best music in the whole game in the form of Stickerbush Symphony soundtrack, but they just have this magical charm to them, that there's just something so awesome about them. Like the first one of them in Creme Quay involves you jumping from barrel to barrel, basically in a barrel maze, and then the second one in Crazy Kremland, which is more straightforward, but it's still one of my favorite levels in the game, although all levels are awesome. And then the last one, right before the final boss, is one of the most beautiful looking levels in the game with just the way it looks, but also as you race as Squawks against Captain K. Rool's pet raven, Screech. All the levels in Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest are just awesome, amazing, unique, and just all fun around. The new enemies are great and varied. Some are slightly different versions of enemies in the first Donkey Kong Country, but that's not a problem at all. Like Cannon is obviously just Clomp with a cannon, but somehow I actually think he's even cooler. And there are Clobbers who don't harm you directly but push you into pits. Black ones can also steal your life. Cutlasses will just ruthlessly attack you with their sharpie sabers, and Clanks who ride the skull coaster, Ghostly Cloaks too, as well as underwater enemies, which include but are not limited to Flotsams, who come in a variety of colors, green and blue, as well as red piranhas, Lockjaws, or starfish shuris. And their defeat animations are wicked awesome as well. When I talked about the first game, I addressed how I think that boss battles in the first game were bland most of the time, just larger versions of regular enemies, nothing else, and then recolored versions of the same bosses. But Diddy's Conquest thankfully has very unique boss battles with very unique mechanics, because you cannot just jump on these guys actually. Like there's Crow, a pirate vulture, and then Cleaver, an enchanted shiny sword with Kremlin skull, and Cudgel, who probably besides K. Rool himself of course, is the only other Kremlin boss, unless you play a Game Boy Advance version where you also get Kerosene, plus King Sink, a king of all singers, and Creepy Crow, a ghost version of Crow who wonderfully fits with the ghostly theme of Gloomy Gulch. But what really takes the cake is the fight with Captain K. Rool himself, because not only it's the best boss battle in the whole game, but the best of all the boss battles in all of the Donkey Kong Country games combined. Of course, animal bodies do return in this game, like Rambi the Rhino, Angard the Swordfish, and Squawks the Parrot all return from the previous game. Winky and Espresso don't return, but they're replaced by what I think are actually much better animal bodies, and we'll talk about them soon enough. Rambi the Rhino has pretty much the same abilities he had in the first game. He can run very fast as a rhino and destroy things to discover secret rooms and all that, as well as defeat enemies with ease. Angard the Swordfish is also pretty much what he was in the first game, but Squawks the Parrot, on the other hand, gets promoted. In the first game he was only in one level, holding a flashlight in the cavern, but here he's now one of your major animal bodies with ability to fly and shoot from his mouth. But two new animal bodies appear as well, and they are Rattly the Snake, who's basically a much better version of Winky the Frog, but what really stands out is Squitter the Spider. He's by far my favorite animal body in all three video games. Well, either him or Rambi the Rhino, but yes, Squitter the Spider and Rambi the Rhino are my two favorite animal bodies in the whole games. Like, Squitter just looks really cool, and he can create his own platforms out of webs. Plus, he can shoot his own webs at enemies, Spider-Man style. Like, yeah, who doesn't love Squitter? He's a fan favorite for a reason. And there are also two extra animal bodies in this game. I call them extra because they're not playable. No, you can't ride them, and one of them only really appears in one level and the other one in two, and they are Clapper the Seal as well as Glimmer the Anglerfish. Like, Clapper only appears in two levels, one of them where he can turn lava into regular water, while in the other one he can turn water into ice that makes you able to walk on it, while Glimmer basically shines through the sunken basement. Kind of like Squawks did it back in the first game. The music and soundtrack of Donkey Kong Country Diddy's Conquest is one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. Probably my second favorite video game soundtrack of all time, only next to some of the Castlevania soundtracks. To just name a few, there is the soundtrack Welcome to Crocodile Isle, which is the main soundtrack of the overworld map, and it fits so perfectly with Croc Isle and the game's far darker atmosphere, and it brings me to my childhood just even listening to it. I've been enchanted and intimidated by that soundtrack as a little kid playing this awesome game, and I still get that feeling now. It's almost as if I have a little time machine anytime I put that game in my Super Nintendo or one of the other Donkey Kong games. One of the best soundtracks is Sticker Bush Symphony. It's so amazing and it's fan favorite for a reason. But I also love the boss theme too. Some of the other awesome soundtracks are Disco Train, Forest Interlude, or Snowbound Land, to just name a few. But really, Every single soundtrack in this game is fabulous and I can just listen to it over and over again. As I said, Donkey Kong Country Diddy's Conquest has one of the best video game soundtracks in video game history. I also really love the attention to detail in this game. The previous game before it also had already lots of attention to detail, but I think this game has even more of it. So just as Dixie blowing her chewing gum when she stands, or Diddy just juggling, or how when you defeat an enemy on Gangplank Galleon and they fall, there is a splash, they fall in the water. And Diddy and Dixie always freaking out at the sight of a boss. Or when you look at Shiny Cleaver, you can see the lava reflection in him. Even to this day, it's also impressive and it all aged so well. These games are older than 20 and it's so impressive how much the creators could achieve so much back in the day with all that attention to detail. Like the first Donkey Kong Country game, there are plenty of bonus rooms in this game as well, but this time they have an actual purpose. Besides Cranky Kong not giving you a hard time, because at the end of each bonus room there is a Creme coin which you get, because in the first game like just entering the bonus room was enough to make you complete it, but here in order to actually complete a bonus room you have to obtain a Creme coin at the end of it, and then you visit Kluba's kiosk and you pay him 15 Creme coins which gives you an access to the Lost World. That's also where the hardest level in the game Animal Antics is, and I still can have some trouble with it. Yep, it's really that difficult. And you also fight a bonus boss, which is actually Captain K. Rool again, and after beating him, you unlock the game's true ending. And as a little kid, I was completely unaware of it actually. I mean, I did know of the Lost World, and I was playing Lost World levels actually, but I never had an idea that beating them all would actually unlock a true ending, or that there even was one, or bonus boss for that matter. Like, I only discovered it only as a teenager. Sometimes I wish I could discover that bonus boss and secret ending much earlier as a kid. I can only wonder what a little kid version of me would really think of it, and how much I'll be impressed to know that I have another battle with Captain K. Rool and a secret additional ending. But you can actually even get a over 100% game completion, and in order to do that you have to on the other hand find all the decay coins. Yet another interesting addition to the game, every single level has one decay coin, while in the early levels it's pretty easy to find them. In later levels it's actually far more challenging and requires a lot more thinking outside the box, and it's actually pretty fun to think outside the box and find all the decay coins. And what you get if you find all the decay coins, in addition to a full game completion, Cranky Kong will also put you on #1 podium for best video game heroes. #1 obviously generally is Super Mario, of course, and then there's also Yoshi and Link, although you can't see Link here because if Diddy gets on the podium like I got him, then Link no longer is on the podium. But if you find every single decay coin, then Diddy will be #1, taking over Mario's spot. But yes, finding decay coins is also really fun. Donkey Kong Country is a magnificent platformer, but truly it's in Donkey Kong Country 2 where magic truly shines. Donkey Kong Country 2 is considered the best in the series, and for a very good reason, and it's certainly the one I played the most in my childhood, and it's still very much my favorite of all the three. Donkey Kong Country is a great intro, but Donkey Kong Country 2 is a perfection and a truly home run of the series, and a perfect sequel in every way, shape or form. This is what a truly perfect sequel should be. Make what made the original great, but also improve upon it in every way and elevate on it. And Donkey Kong Country 2 is very much that. This game is truly a masterpiece of Super Nintendo. Not many video games can be considered a masterpiece. If you ever ask me what game do I consider masterpiece, Donkey Kong Country Diddy's Conquest would very easily come to mind, because this is easily platforming at its best. This game truly is a platformer masterpiece. Like, it done everything that the original has done well and elevated upon it in every way. Like, as I said, it's not only it's the best in the Donkey Kong Country series, but as I just said, I truly consider it a true platforming masterpiece. And because this is my favorite video game trilogy, this could actually be considered my favorite individual game of all time. I mean, all three of them, really, but Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Conquest, as I said, it's the best in the series and a true platforming at its best and a true masterpiece. Now, all we have left is Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. Only one left and the Donkey Kong Country Marathon will be complete. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this video, and talk to you very soon in the review of Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. See you then.